This is The Unhappy Millionaire, where entrepreneurs and other top performers discover how to go beyond the bank balance to create thriving, joyful lives. For more, visit theunhappymillionaire.com. Now, on to the show. So I want to tell you a story that I don't know if I've ever told it to you before, but I got my dream writing job when I was 23, about to turn 24. And the problem with it was I had to take like a 25% pay cut, moved out across the country, and I don't know, I was making something like $30,000 a year in Orange County, California, which is basically poor. But a few months after that, my dad had introduced me to a guy that he was friendly with. The guy took me out to lunch and he said, "Look, I've heard about the work you were doing before you came out here writing business proposals. I could really use a guy like that, and I'm ready to offer you 6 figures tomorrow to do this." And I instantly turned it down. And I remember he kind of looked at me for a second and he goes, "It's probably the smartest thing you'll ever do." And he didn't explain it, but I definitely came to see exactly what he saw, which is he probably had the perspective of, I make good money and I'm miserable. And this guy seems to really like what he's doing. Maybe he knows something I don't, or maybe he knows exactly what I know, but doesn't appreciate how important it is to enjoy what you're doing and not sacrifice your enjoyment for what you're doing for money. And that's definitely a decision I haven't regretted. And part of why I didn't regret it, because I knew this even then, I had the view of, I'm 23, I'll figure out how to make a good living from this eventually once I get really good. And thankfully I have. I know your story went a little bit differently.
I don't like it that all the good stuff comes from your stories and all the bad.
Oh, well, I'm sure we'll get there.
My story is completely different. My relationship with money was a strange relationship because we didn't have money at all when I was growing up. I remember even food was sometimes a problem, not because we didn't have any, but it was like, can we afford meat? And both my parents were working really hard. And I remember as a kid, I was taught to save money, save the money, save it, coin after coin after coin. So even as a teenager, I was very careful with money so money doesn't run out. And I had this anxiety around money. And the first thing I did coming out of the army in Israel is start working really, really hard. And I remember I got a paycheck when I was 22 that was bigger than my dad's, who was working for like 30 years in the electricity company, because I was working as an SAT tutor. And all my SAT tutor friends were doing like 1 course a week. So because every course is 8 hours a week and you speak nonstop. Actually, it's 9 or even 10 hours a week. I took 4. I would speak for 5 hours in the morning and then 5 hours in the evening, and then work as a shift manager, a double shift the day after. And then the day after, I would talk for 10 hours, and that's how it went. And so I was losing my voice and trying to regain my voice from the night till the morning. I was exhausted. Not to mention that through a college, all my normal friends were just studying really, really hard. It was engineering. It was super hard. And I had a full-time job. So I would not show up to the lectures. I would copy everything at night. I would not sleep because I wanted to make the money. It was all about the money. And fast forward, I'm in tech. I sold a company in the Silicon Valley. I had money, quite a bit of money. And the most I allowed myself to do is to take a couple of months off to finish a book I wanted to finish. And I finished that book. And then I had 2 options. One is to go in a direction of philosophy and public speaking that I knew all my life and all my introspections showed me I loved, or to take an outrageous salary from another company that really wanted me. It was the weirdest thing. I said, no, I don't want the job. And then they flew me to San Francisco. I'm sitting in front of this multi-billion-dollar company CEO, and he says, "You're not leaving this office without taking the job. I need you. We need to grow the customer success. Everybody that I talk to about you says you're amazing. You're the guy I need. We need to 10x the customer success." And I said, no, I don't want to. And then he threw out a number that really shocked me. I mean, I didn't expect it. It had an extra 0 or something. And then I said, I'll think about it. And I made the mistake of taking that job. Fast forward again, about 6, 7, 8 months later, my son drops me at work on a Monday morning. And I have the perfect job. It's just 5 minutes from my house. I'm making tons of money. Everything's working. And I'm about to get out of the car. And he says, "Hey, Dad, is everything okay?" And I look at him and say, "Yeah, Ron, why are you asking?" He said, "Because you look like you want to die." And then I went up to my office, couldn't work. I was actually looking at myself, thinking about what's going on. How did I get to the point where my kid thinks I want to die? And I actually do want to die in the sense that I'm not enjoying myself. This is not where I want to be. I remember I was like 45, 46. I quit my job. So I won't tell you the whole story of what happened later and so on, but the price you pay, that guy that told you it's the best decision you'll ever make was right. Because think about what it means to a soul to wake up every morning and say, you're not the kind of soul who's courageous and authentic enough to follow the nature of who you are and what you want to do. How that degrades your experience, what it means to live in the skin of someone who knows that every freaking hour that you're awake. And I felt betrayal and self-betrayal more than anything. It was the worst feeling ever. And actually, it was the real turning point in my story to be where I am, where I'm completely fulfilled. It's not that I don't like the money. The millions in the bank are really nice to have. But what are they for, right? What is money? And what do we need it?
Well, that's what I want to explore, because the conventional wisdom, the way it will often be put is, well, the problem was you're placing too much value on money, too much importance on it. And there's something to that. But I think that's completely the wrong way to think about it. And I do think a good place to start is with what money is, because you and I are both, to understate the point, tremendous fans of Ayn Rand. And one of the most famous scenes in all of her work is what's called the Money Speech by a character named Francisco d'Anconia. And you guys can look it up, read Atlas Shrugged if you want it. But the spirit of it is that you think this is a world without money. You still need to make stuff, right? You still need to go out there and hunt or farm. You have to do things, otherwise you're dead. And what money is really a tool so that we can engage in that process on a much more sophisticated level. We can trade with one another in all kinds of complex ways. I don't have to hope that you want my corn so that I can get the shoes that you made, right? You sell corn to anyone who wants it for money, and then you can use that money to buy anything in the world that you want. And so it's really money, I take as it's an insignia of you produce something valuable. You created something valuable. And so it's a tool of trade so that you and I and all the billions of people across the planet can deal with each other cooperatively through mutually beneficial relationships, rather than you grow corn and I come along with giant mallet, beat you over the head and take it.
I heard a lecture early in my journey discovering Ayn Rand, and I think it was Yaron that said, Yaron Brook, the head of the Ayn Rand Institute, and he said something like, wealth is not money, wealth is stuff. And it's such a simple statement, like wealth is not money, wealth is stuff. And I was thinking about it. I always thought that wealth is money. If you think about what money is, it's frozen energy. It's just frozen energy. To do what? Do things that you want to do that cost money. Traveling is somebody's giving you energy to be in Australia in 16 hours. If you spend it on a car, somebody put the energy to build the car and you're now taking that energy from them, right? If you want to go write a book, you're not producing. So first, it might be weird, but first to understand that money is just a tool. It's not the thing itself is really important. The way I look at money right now is how much frozen energy do I have in the tank that I can use to do non-productive activities? Because my productive activities are actually creating more wealth, more money, I would just say. And then I use the money for the wealth that I want in my life to pursue my values. And meaning and happiness come for the pursuit of a wide array of productive and non-productive pursuits that need to be fueled by that energy. Not more. The focus on money as the primary is where the problem begins. And I think that's what I had to rewire or to retrain myself to not just think about, but feel. I had an anxiety around money and I had to get away from it.
Yeah, frankly, as much as I think my decision to turn down that money was in part, I had my priorities right, in part is I had a very different upbringing where I never had to worry about money. And I think I didn't take seriously. I wasn't keyed into, well, you got to earn it. Nobody's going to give it to you. It was just, yeah, everything's always going to be fine. And I definitely found myself in situations later in life where, well, man, I wish I had worried a little bit more. I wish I had been more diligent about saving. I wish I had been more diligent about negotiating, because my life would have been in a much better state. So that you can definitely undervalue and not take seriously. This has to be produced in your life is much better if you take seriously earning and building using money correctly?
It's a complicated issue. And so the relationship with money and then the so-called trade-off of money and, let's say, passion, right? There's so many books written about, should I go with passion or should I go with what makes money, what I'm good at? Just go with your passion, right? Which is usually equates to do something whimsical with no regard to money. And then the other alternative, false alternative, is like, no, worry about the money and the passion will come later. A lot of people give you the don't follow your passion. Both are wrong. And people just don't like complicated answers. But usually the complicated answers are the right ones, where you have to worry about meaning. You have to worry about, which is what you did when you turned down meaningless job that could produce 6 figures, because you knew what you wanted. And you need to also make sure that you have enough fuel in the tank to do the other things you like, which is you don't just write all day long. You have kids and you need a house and you need to travel and you need a car and you need so many other things that you want to afford. And those are good reasons to want more money. By the way, in parts of your life, it's okay to prioritize putting money in the storage because you know that you're going to use the money to do something very meaningful later on in life. That is the complexity of the pursuit of values. They require energy. And so if you're not good to the point where somebody would pay you to do something, where's the money going to come from? You might need to have to work 2 jobs, one that produces the money and then go take a shower and start another working day. There's a famous Paul Graham essay called Do What You Love, where I really like the 2-job route. People don't like to hear this. It's like, just give me a simple answer about should I make money or fall in love with the concept of having a lot of money. There's so many friends I have where their only goal in life is money related. Yeah, I want to IPO to make the money. I want to make the next 10 million. This is not a goal. It's not a value-oriented view, and you're mixing the definitions of value and money, because there is a connection there, a lot of connection. Money fuels value pursuits, but they're not the value itself.
So I think on the one hand, there's the issue that it's just a complex thing about how to have the right relationship with money. But on the other hand, there's a problem, which is that the whole moral perspective that we're all inculcated with, all raised with, pushes us to have the wrong relationship with money. That is, pursuing money, and even in the way that you're talking about the healthy orientation where it's part of I'm seeking values, I'm seeking to honor authentically the things I'm passionate about, that's held to be immoral because it's greedy and it's selfish. Or at the very least, if you've heard of effective altruism, you can earn a lot of money, but then you have to give it all away. And if you think about what that means, though, it means it's wrong to value your comfort, your security, your health, your enjoyment, your aspirations, your relationships. One of the best things, I remember a good friend of mine was having his 40th birthday, and his girlfriend at the time reached out to me and was saying, hey, we're going to have a surprise birthday party for him, and would you like to be part of a Zoom call? I said, heck, I'm going to fly out and surprise him. So I flew out from Michigan to California, and the look on his face was priceless. I was the last person on earth he expected to see, and it meant a lot to him. And the thing that enabled it was, I could plop down whatever the hundreds of dollars it was to fly out to him. Our relationships depend on consuming resources. Everything that we do that isn't creating resources consumes resources. And the money is what makes that possible. And so when we're taught that it's wrong to be concerned with money, to pursue money, to seek it as a goal, what it's really saying is it's wrong to pursue your happiness. And I think that's a really corrupt idea. It's, I think, one of the core ideas that we're challenging. And pursuing money, it's part of how we pursue life and pursue happiness.
And it could be much worse than that. I mean, I don't know how to, maybe a complete hypocrisy is how I would define the way I was taught to treat money. Hypocrisy in the sense of make as much as you can, be a millionaire. But then on the outside, it's like, give it away, don't spend too much. I remember I had a friend who was in the education business and he was doing really well. He did huge governmental contracts in education, kind of post-afternoon education with the Ministry of Education. He was making millions of dollars. And he was driving this beat-up car, a Mazda. I asked him, why are you driving this car. I mean, no, I don't want people to know. I can't have people knowing that I'm making so much money. He was embarrassed. And then he started hiding the money in all kinds of places in investments that don't show that he's very rich. Never upgraded his house. And it was really the manifestation of how hypocritical, at least the conservative, altruistic environment that I was brought up in. This do for yourself behind the scenes and give it up or don't show you have it on the outside, which is really weird. That added to the complexity of the relationship I had with money. I think it goes really deep. In Hebrew, you are your brother's keeper. That's the ultimate thing you can be, right? And you love the other as you love yourself. It comes from that. And it's all about giving away. And again, in all the religious rituals around the synagogue, I was taught as a kid is that the person who gives the most money is the most generous, is the most virtuous. That's it. You make money to sit in the synagogue and there is a bidding war. And whoever gets to win the bid is being tapped on the shoulder and like everybody gives him respect. That's what you make money for. And then in the kibbutz, in the commune that I grew up in my teenage years, it was the opposite. It's like we're not allowed to touch money. I'll tell you a weird story. I was given, I don't remember, it's like 10 shekels, and I was put in the middle of the city. It was an exercise, an educational exercise. And my job was to wander around the city for several hours and then find my way back home to the kibbutz. And they wanted to teach you life skills. And I had 10 shekels. And I didn't know what to do with 10 shekels. So I went to a record store and I put out the Pink Floyd record I want. I had some change, so I think I saw 16 on the record. And I go to the cashier and I give her 16 and she looks at me. I gave her 16 cents. It was $16. Just imagine what it means to a kid to really don't understand what is this thing that people exchange and what is it for? You were talking about the money speech. I was walking around with a money speech with my friends. I was reading the money speech to my friends like, do you understand how misunderstood money is? That money is the root of all evil. That's what we were taught. And I mean, you're right. It's effective altruism. It's altruism itself. It's the Christian morality. Actually, Jewish people have a really more complicated issue because we're taught that we love money, but we're hated for it. Just think about how much complexity there's there.
Well, and you mentioned the hypocrisy, and there's a formal name for this in philosophy, which is the moral practical dichotomy. And the idea is, if you have a morality that you can't live by, a morality that's telling you to sacrifice your values, give up, live for others, that's clearly self-destructive if you carried it through. So morality can't be something that you live by all the time. You also have a practical side. And the practical side is we're not worried about moral principles. We're not worried about virtues. You got to live. And so you get this dueling advice where sometimes, am I allowed to be practical here and make a lot of money? Or do I have to be moral here and give it up? And people don't know how to function by that. And that's why one of the striking things that I remember, I was talking to a young lady once a long time ago, and I said something to her, and it literally floored her. She was not philosophical or anything like that, but I said, the moral is the practical if you have the right morality. And this idea that morality could be practical, that it could actually give you guidance for happiness, this is something she had never heard before. And I think it completely helps you reconceive money and everything else in your life.
That's so true. I see from where I stand today, being over 50, all the people around me that are paying the dear prices of developing a soul that is split in the middle, a soul that is not integrated, a soul that cannot take itself to feel and pure joy and uncontradictory joy, as Ayn Rand calls it. They're unbelievably contradicted. They cannot even feel, and they become cynical about it's impossible. When I talk about my happiness, I get a little bit of like, yeah, Tal with his childish nonsense about being so happy and following morality. You just lose it, and you lose that muscle to value, to look at life as an integrated whole, to understand what really fuels your state of being, this condition we call happiness. And you deteriorate from those contradictions into this apathetic state of contradictions all around you. And then it expresses itself in a horrific way. I think it expresses itself in the way you treat other people. It expresses itself with how you treat work. It expresses itself in your sex. It expresses itself in everything. And unfortunately, there's this childish wonder that people lose. I have friends that I grew up with in the kibbutz. I was around them 24/7 because we were living in a kid's house. So I knew them as kids and I know them now. And you can see the thread that goes from the wrong philosophy taught to a kid and the prices that kid pays later on in life. It's almost, they cannot even reverse it in any way. It's in them. And it starts from that dichotomy you just talked about, expressed in their relationship with money, and how every Friday evening discussion that I have with people suddenly goes to the money and what money does and how money and what's going on politically with money and how taxes are stealing money from you. And so it's all about the external. And actually, it connects to the external versus the internal. It's what people think about me. How much money do I have? What car am I driving? What kind of house do I have? It just orients your life for anything other than your deep, true happiness. It's that bad.
So the way that I hold it is that money is of crucial importance, but it's not of primary importance. And you use that word primary, and primary is important. Things that aren't primary don't mean that they're unimportant. It just means that they don't come first. And treating money as primary, the reason that's a mistake is because it's taking the core activity of your life, work. It's what you spend most of the time doing, about most of your energy towards, and it's turning it into a sheer means. I mean, imagine if somebody offered you this deal, Tal. For 10 hours a day, you're going to prison. But the rest of the time, you're going to get to live a lavish, wonderful life. You're throwing away the bulk of my life. You're sentencing me to prison. And yet so many of us, when we make money a primary, what we're doing is, I think, in a sense, sentencing ourselves to prison for most of our lives.
It's really the erroneous philosophies that we're still being brought up on that are creating those. You build a spaceship with the wrong physics, it's going to explode or malfunction in some way. And yeah, it's time to learn a philosophy that gives you the right perspective about not just money is one thing, but also valuing, which I think is the primary, really understanding the positive here. And so if we taught kids and we taught young adults that the primary is valuing, what does it look like to value? What does it look like to identify the things that bring meaning to your life? And then seeing money as a tool towards that, as a means to that end, then everything falls into place. I had to be 45 to realize that something is really wrong here and we're going to change it. You hear people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they have billions of dollars. What do they do with it? More value. I want to fix Twitter, I'll buy it. I don't care. I'm going to lose, he said it, I'm going to lose billions, tens of billions of dollars potentially. I'm making a lot of money from Amazon. I want to move on to something that I think is super important. I'm going to take all my billions and build another space company because I think it's super important to have people travel to space. The relationship with money is like, yeah, I'm making all that money because it fuels what I'm interested in. That's it. Who cares? And people with no money, so it's easy for you to say, no, you got it all wrong. They didn't start their pursuits because they wanted money. And another thing I want to say about money, especially for people whose values are not going to produce a lot of money. If you want to be a teacher or a writer, writers can make a lot of money if you're really successful. If you want to parent, that's really important to you. You want to homeschool. If you're going to do things that don't produce money, then you have to think about how much money do I need in order to still pursue my values? And how do I organize my life in a way where I don't need so much money? You can't have contradicting values like, I want to be a teacher in a middle school, but I also want to drive a Ferrari. It just won't work. So being rational about the relationship between how much the scope of impact you're going to make commercially in the market and how much money you will have in order to spend on non-productive pursuits. So it's an integrated view of your life, integrated view of the different domains of values that you have, mainly your central purpose around work, the other values of relationships, of health, of rejuvenation, and then the wealth, the money part of it really fuels all of it. So you make sure that your central purpose puts enough money in the bucket, or maybe your investments. By the way, I want to teach people a way to think about money. What if you can create enough passive income to the point where you don't have to worry about the bare necessities? At that point, you're freed up to even not think about money is an issue when you're pursuing a new career. And people don't think, especially young people, don't think about money this way. It's like money can produce money. And the less I'm dependent on producing the money, then I'm freer in a way for a wider range of taking more risks in my pursuits. So that's the way to think about it, as a part of your life that fuels the other parts. And so you need to make sure that there's enough in the tank, but you're not living the fuel tank. That's not the focus of the car.
The basic healthy reason to try to get extremely rich is to build the life you want. And so if you have kids and you want to get them a great education, that's a good reason to get rich. If you're energized by intense challenges and tangible impacts of creating commercial value at scale. Yeah, I was always impressed by the story that Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was a bodybuilder, was making most of his money actually from real estate, because the lesson that he learned was, I want this money earning stuff for it because I'm not going to be young and super strong forever, and turn that into his cash cow. I want to end with this, though. A friend of ours, psychologist Gina Gorlin, and she works with a lot of startup entrepreneurs. She published, it's 4 quadrants, and it's healthy reasons to try to get extremely rich and unhealthy reasons to try to get extremely rich, and then healthy reasons not to try to get extremely rich and unhealthy reasons. And I just want to highlight some of these things because I think it's really interesting and it resonated with me a lot. That's a good reason to try to get really rich. If you want maximum flexibility to travel, pursue passion projects, or invest in valued causes later in your life, a healthy reason to want to get really rich. Unhealthy reasons, or healthy reasons to not want to get rich, is if it doesn't fit the life you want to build. That is, your most valued projects and pursuits are not commercially scalable. If you have kids, you want to devote a lot of your own time and energy to raising them. And then in quadrant 3, we have unhealthy reasons to try to get extremely rich. And that is, you want the illusion you want to affect. And what she has in mind by that is, you're afraid of feeling inadequate or like a failure if you don't get rich. You want to be seen as successful in the eyes of others. You want to escape anxiety brought on by your probably inherited scarcity mindset. And then this is my favorite quadrant because nobody talks about this, Tal. Unhealthy reasons to not try to get extremely rich. And she has here, you're afraid of feeling guilty over your privilege or capitalistic greed if you do. You want to be seen as virtuous and unselfish in the eyes of others. You want to avoid the effort it requires or the emotional risk of trying and failing. So to me, like, that's something you never hear in the culture, but I think it really captures our point. The primary thing is you need to do something with your life that fills you with joy. Money is really important, and there's plenty of reasons why, if you're doing something you're passionate about, you should be striving to prosper as much as you can. But if your values are aligned with something much more modest, if the life you envision requires something more modest, then that's fine as well. But even there, money is important.
It explains the plague of stoicism in the Silicon Valley. If you think about how people think about money, and I know a lot of engineers from my own experience that is just, yeah, we're making so much money, why do we need it? And basically, it's better to give it away and be philanthropic and just live with 3 shirts, 2 pants, 2 pairs of sneakers, and we don't need a car. We can really drive buses. This whole idea of, I want this image of an altruistic person who's good. They're serious about being good. It's just that the moral compass is pointing in the wrong direction. So I think there's a real deep problem beneath that. Why do you even want that image? What's wrong about having a great life with a home that you want and affording expensive things and going to expensive restaurants? And I think it's a great way to just show what an integrated view of life looks like in the healthy part and what an unintegrated, contradictory view looks like.
I'm Don Watkins, he's Tal Safani, and this has been The Unhappy Millionaire. Ready to take the next step in your journey? Visit theunhappymillionaire.com, where you can find powerful resources for building a life that you love and details on how you can work with Tal and me.